So when you're young like that and you're jumping into business, that it's kind of good not to know what you don't know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you really knew back then what you didn't know, you may not have done what you did, right? And so I mean, I feel from my experience, that was my experience. Right? I probably wouldn't have gotten started in the business I was in if I really didn't know what I didn't know, right? So for me, there's a lot of trouble ahead that I didn't see, right? But in getting through it, even at the loss of financial losses, the lessons learned made me stronger, right? So tell me about some of the lessons you learned that you didn't know were coming, right?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, Gary, there's so many, but I think just to paraphrase a little bit, like what you're saying and what I think, and I'll try to come up with a few specific examples, but really, there's this incredibly liberating feeling that I experienced becoming like a founder of a company and realizing like it was my score sheet, right? It was like, so I spend a fair amount of time watching college sports. I'm from Michigan. We're not very good right now at football. We do have a great basketball program. And I often think about how frustrating it is on a Saturday to watch your team lose when you have nothing to do with the outcome, and how different that is than like Monday through Friday when I'm like working for myself and have total control over the outcome, or at least a huge amount of control over the outcome. And I think for me, there's a framework there, which is just in life, I think the sooner you are responsible for your own outcomes, the better. And the sooner you take responsibility for those, the better. And the sooner you realize that like no amount of handouts or hands up or anything else is going to have anywhere, like what you really need is for people to believe in you and to have an opportunity to build something. And if you do that, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to hit some bumps in the road. And so I think for me, the obvious one was when Andy and my partnership really, really struggled. We just didn't really know how to be business partners. We both worked at very comfortable high-end jobs that you only get if you go to top schools and work really hard and are good at tests and everything else. But they're homogeneous environments and they're it's very prescribed. It's show up, people tell you what to do. Here's your computer, here's your desk. It's a beautiful office. You've got a nice business card. We're going to pay you really well. And you're surrounded by supportive, thoughtful, nice people who all want you to succeed. That's pretty far from like being a ditch digger, right?
Yeah,
or it's like,
absolutely.
Here's your, and I think what I found was like, I like people who work hard every day for what they have. I identified with them and I wanted to feel like one of them. And I think having real, like, so Andy and I, in the early days, we made the first, call it 10,000+ pairs of Bonobos. We made them in the garment district in New York City. And I remember in 2008, we were paying ourselves like 70 grand a year. So among our classmates from Stanford Business School, we were probably the two lowest paid people that graduated out of like 400. So, we had the lowest cash compensation. We owned part of a company that really wasn't worth anything. Our first investment was raised at a $3 million pre-money valuation. We raised 750 grand at 3 million pre. So it was a very low valuation by today's standards. And I remember carrying fabric from a jobber's office to a cut and sew shop in July. It's like 105 degrees. And I feel like a very Bush League version of Arnold Schwarzenegger when he's carrying those big tree trunks around in Commando. And it's like, yeah, I'm like sweating through my clothes. I've got this big roll of fabric on my shoulder. And I just feel like I'm so tough, and I'm, going up 4 flights of stairs in a factory filled with, potentially, not legal residents of this country who don't speak English, who are, slaving away making products. And I mean, look, it's not like we were working with sweatshops. We paid people fairly, but like at the end of the day, it's not a very glamorous thing being in production in the middle of the garment district in New York. And I learned a lot of lessons, but I actually really liked it. I liked it better than putting on a suit and showing up at a consulting firm and feeling a little bit like an imposter because I was, you know, in my 20s being paid a lot to give advice to Fortune 500 companies who, frankly, what was I doing that? How did I end up in that job? So
that's amazing though that you had the courage to jump out of that when there's big money like that and in a great opportunity
it's hard.
like that.
It's hard to walk
How do you
away.
leave?
It's hard to walk away, and I think people end up trapped by the lifestyle they live. I mean, the one thing I'd say, Gary, is like universal advice I give 20-something year old kids who are working in their first few jobs: save as much money as you can so that you have the flexibility to try something different, right? Like I didn't come out of college, you know, my life savings at the time was probably like $5,000 or something. And so, you know, I had to start somewhere. So I found a job, I worked hard, and I saved a lot of money. I never had my own apartment. I always lived with roommates. I didn't drive fancy cars. I drove crappy used cars. And like, I took public transportation. I cooked a lot at home. Like I had saved quite a bit of dough by the time I got to business school, and I used that money to start a company. And like, that's why you save, not to buy a fancy car, like to change your life, right? To have the flexibility to go become a self-made person. And look, I had a lot of help. My parents paid for college. Like, I feel very fortunate. It wasn't like I came from some amazing, you know, incredibly underprivileged background, but I had to work. I used my own money to start my first company. And I think that's a really important part of my life story and who I am, you know, something that no one will ever take away.